Good morning, everyone. Welcome to part one of our Teach from Home series brought to you by Macmillan Teacher Campus, Macmillan Education, and Tropon Publishers. We are all aware that this is an extremely difficult time for us, and while many people are comfortable teaching with technology, many of us have been thrown into the deep end and have been told to swim. But fear not, Macmillan is here. During the session today, you will hear about what it means to teach from home and also why you should embark on this journey. In the second session, you will get many practical tips and ideas on how to go about doing this. We'll go into a little bit more detail. We'll show you some cool sites and apps that are available that you can use. If you didn't manage to register for the follow-up session, don't worry. We have recorded session available, so you can just drop me an email and then I can send you the links to those recorded sessions. I will also put my email address into the chat box a little bit later. We'll begin the session with some introductions. My name is Ricky Steenkamp. I'm a project manager at Macmillan Teacher Campus, and we'll be chatting to you throughout the entire session on the chat line. Macmillan Teacher Campus, or MTC as we like to call ourselves, is the training division of Macmillan Education. We were all educators in our previous lives and have retained the passion for teaching. I'll also be answering some of your questions in the chat, and some we will discuss during the Q&A, so be sure to stay connected for that. Our presenter today is Karen Valstra. Karen speaks to you today with an extensive experience in all things tech. She has her own consulting business and is passionate about teachers, learners, and students, and using tech to enhance learning and teaching. Karen will also explain the session rules and how to use your session control panel. Welcome, Karen. It's good to have you, and we cannot wait for you to share your knowledge with us. Over to you.
Hello, everybody. Hope you're well. Hope you're warm on this really cold day. Let's start by having a look at how we can engage. So first of all, if you look on the panel on your right-hand side, the gray bar, you'll see that there's a little gray box in that space. Please would you click on that to download the notes. There are a range of notes we put in there. One, the notes from this workshop, and then 2 catalogs. So please would you click on that and you can download the materials from today's session. The next thing is we really want you to get engaged. We want you to participate. We want you to share your ideas. So the way you do that is with the chat box. So if you look under the little icon of the people where the arrow is pointing at that funny little circle or speech bubble, click on that and it'll open up a chat. When you first click, it will say chat, and when you click again, it opens it up so that it's open for you like that. And at the bottom, you will see it says enter your message. And then you would type your message in that space. And when you've typed the message, just press enter on your keyboard and your messages would come through. So we really want you to engage with Ricky, like she said. We really want you to participate in this chat. We've asked you where you're from and what your weather's like. So thank you to the people who are saying hello. Thank you to the people who are telling us where you're from. It's really exciting to get engaged. It's also nice to know where everybody's from. So thank you to everybody who's now putting in the good mornings and the hellos. We really want you to participate during this session this morning, and that's the way we're going to do it. So hopefully you've got a cup of coffee or something warm to drink, that you, if you are in a cold space, that you've got nice warm clothes on and that you're ready to engage in this activity. We'd like you to really participate with us and really engage in the topic with us. So hopefully we'll have some really good engagements. Ricky will answer some of the questions that you put up during the chat, and she'll do it with using text, and then we'll have a discussion at the end of the session with a Q&A as well. So good morning all, and let's begin. So what is this remote learning thing that we hear about? What does it mean? How does it affect us? Well, remote learning itself literally means that, remote. So we are physically not in the same space as your students. You're working separately. So you might be working in one space and your students are in another space. So just like you're doing during COVID, you're not in the lecture theatre with your students or in a workshop, you're each working at a distance with each other. The other term that you might hear a lot of is distance learning. Well, distance learning means that you are actually working at a distance, so similar to remote, but distance learning itself has been around for a very long time. If you think of UNISA and how old the university is, they're a distance learning institution. And so they have been functioning, I think it's for more than 100 years already. Traditionally, distance learning was paper-based. So notes would be copied and those would be posted or distributed to the students who were not in the same space as lecturers. Now, distance learning is also digital. So when you're using your interactions on your computer and you're engaging on documents that way, you're doing distance learning when you're not in the same physical space. And often it can be a mixture of both paper and digital, but it means that you're not physically in the same space. While the other term that you might hear is online learning. Now, online learning is purely digital, no paper-based. You're working online from a digital point of view. This can happen both in a face-to-face space. So, for example, a space where you might be in a computer lab or your students might be on tablets or computers, but you're engaging with each other through an electronic medium. So using a response system or asking them questions or on a collaborative doc, they're working digitally, they are online. But this can also mean that it's not in the physical space. So just like you do it in a physical space, you can also not do it in a physical space. And so in this instance, with the lockdown that you've been having, with colleges not open or perhaps part classes coming in and not full classes coming in, you're using the online learning from a distancing point of view. So I'd like to do a poll in terms of how do you experience doing this remote learning with your students? Just give me a second while I open it up, please. So this is a multiple choice type question, and you can answer as many different versions as you like. You might feel that sometimes it changes and sometimes it doesn't. So how do you experience doing it? We go from it's fantastic, loving it, students are engaged, all the way to not engaged at all. So I'm going to launch it. You can tick one or more than one of the boxes. If you can literally just click on your screen and get a reaction. What you can do also is if it's not loading, so if your connectivity is not too good, you can actually type in your answers in the chat. But we would really love for you to participate and engage. So I can see some of the answers coming in. So thank you to the people who are engaging. If the click's not working, it might be due to your connectivity. Please put your answers in the chat. Come on, guys, we need for you to engage. I've only got about 30% of you answering. Let's have a look. Fill in the chat box. I need your answers in the chat. Some challenges could be better. That's looking good. So thank you for the comments in the chat as well. Come on, everybody. Where are your responses? What's happening in your spaces? Are you actually engaging with your students? Could it be better, or maybe you're not engaging? Please tell us how you're working with your students. We're only sitting on 48% on the chat. Let's see if we can get some more. Can more of you, if you can't click on it, please put your answers in the chat. It doesn't tick if your connectivity is not good, Cecilia. So sometimes what happens is if the signal on your side's not good, it means that it's taking longer to load on your side. So that's why it might not tick. Thank you for the responses. It's good to see. Could be better. Good, it's working. Were you saying good, it's working? Perhaps you want to tell us what's working, what's really good about what's happening in your space. I'm going to give you a few more seconds to respond. Remember, if I've closed the chat, you can still close the poll, you can still put your answers in the chat. I'm going to close it now. And I'm going to share the results. So this is really interesting. So your reaction today is much better than the reaction we saw last week. The session we did last week, we had 70% of the people saying they were not engaged with their students at all. So it's exciting to see from the people participating here, for you as the participants, that 48% of you are actually saying it's okay and it's working. That's really exciting, and it could be better. So hopefully we'll give you some ideas today around it could be better. And then looking at your comments in the chat, that there's a range of responses there as well. It's interesting that one of you has actually said 50% of your learners have access. So that's sad in terms of 50% don't. So let's think about how we can actually engage with our students as a whole. Thank you so much for participating. It's really valuable that you're getting engaged. So thank you very much. It's valued. So why should we do this remote teaching? Let's look at this in a bit more detail. Well, first of all, you're committed lecturers. You have a role to play. You're employed as lecturers. You want your students to succeed. Your students' interests come first. You want them to finish your courses. You want them to understand the work, and you want them to become really successful individuals in the knowledge that you're passing on to them. So that's one of the main reasons why you want to do this remote learning, because you want the learning to continue. The next thing is you're showing commitment to your students. So by reaching out to them and saying to them that you want to engage, that there's scope for them to participate, you're actually showing them commitment that you as the lecturer are going to try and help them in this difficult time. The next thing that you're going to look at is saying, well, you need to keep your students motivated and committed to the learning process. Just as some of you might have expressed that it's difficult to do or that it's not always easy, your students might be feeling the same, that they're frustrated, they don't have access, they might not have devices, they might not have data. But by reaching out in different forms and in different ways, you can help them to try and remain on track, that you can help them committed to their learning process, and that you're not leaving them out. The next thing is you want to cultivate in your students the sense of curiosity and interest in learning. So even though it's different, even though it's not what is the norm, that you're still encouraging your students to be curious and to be interested in taking their learning further. And that's why we want to do this remote learning, that you haven't fallen off the planet, but you're actually still there and you still care. And then you want to keep them on track, that they actually can try and finish their course still within the designated time period. That you'll say to them, we're going to try our best to really help you achieve those goals. So how do your students see this space? What are the opportunities for teaching remotely? Are your students feeling isolated, withdrawn? Are they just engaging with their peers, or are they actually interacting with the work that you want them to do? What are the things that you are seeing within the space? So the first thing, if you see this as an opportunity for yourself, wow, you can work from home. Can be seen as a real positive in terms of saving you time traveling, and that you can access your resources. So how are you seeing that as a convenience? The other thing is, from your point of view, is you have this whole world of possibilities opening up to you, that you as the lecturer can be upskilling yourself, that you can be on a journey of new learnings. Just think of all the things that you might have learned in the last period of time, maybe using a video conference that you've never used before, or maybe learning to use some animations or interactives that you could share with your students. So what are the possibilities that you could find that will really augment and enhance what you're teaching already? Then think about how you're taking your students on a learning path to the fourth industrial revolution. So what are the kinds of things that you're doing with your students? What are the digital tools that you're sharing with them that take them into this fourth industrial revolution? What are the 21st century skills that you are empowering your students with? So using digital tools, making them engage from a digital point of view. So really getting them to use these 21st century tools and fourth industrial revolution tools within what you're doing. How are you fostering long distance engagement? How are you making it meaningful that your students are really engaging? So if you're reaching out to them, that the students are feeling valued, that it can actually work from a distance point of view. So exploring those types of things. The other cool thing is that you've got no lost assignments. Students can't come to you and say, oh man, sir, the dog ate my assignment and I really can't hand it in on time. It's a digital assignment. So therefore it's not going to get lost. So that could be a fun way of looking at it as well. A variety of resources to enhance your lessons. So there are lots and lots of digital spaces and digital type things that you could be using to add to your lessons so that your students can actually be learning from that point of view. And tomorrow we'll explore those in detail. The other thing is you can encourage your students to take ownership of their learning by making it more self-paced and more flexible. In some ways, we do this already when you're doing face-to-face lectures. You don't watch over their shoulders all the time while they're working. You give them a project and then you say to them, well, let's go on and you do it on your own and I will see it either as it progresses or perhaps even at the end. So how are you encouraging your students to do their own self-paced learning, even when you're not seeing them regularly in lectures? So why is it valuable to you as a lecturer? First of all, I really want you to think about this. Technology is not going to replace you as a lecturer. For years now, there have been things called MOOCs, so massive online courses, and thousands and hundreds of thousands of people sign up for these courses, but actually a very small percentage of people finish them. And the main reason they say that people drop off is because of the lack of human engagement or interaction. So originally MOOCs were just all digital. You would work through the material, you might get a bit of a response form, but generally you worked at your own pace and went through them. And so MOOCs themselves have evolved to include more lecturer interaction. So you as the lecturer are the driver of motivating your students, one, to be interested in what they're learning, two, to participate, and three, to actually engage and keep going. So one of the main reasons for you for being valuable is just for being you as the lecturer. So let's think about this further. Why is it beneficial to you? You are linking with your students. This has been a long period of time that you haven't seen them. By using remote learning, you're engaging with them, you're linking with them, you're providing them with feedback, you're updating them. This is all really, really important. The students are feeling as if they're valued because they're getting a reaction, they're getting an engagement. That your students actually you can get to know your students better. So you could have small group sessions instead of large sessions where they can actually ask one-on-one questions. And so you might get to know them better than when you're doing a face-to-face class. You can be encouraging them to collaborate online, not just with you, but with each other. And so in this collaboration, the students feel valued. And because of that, the respect for you as the lecturer actually grows because they feel that you're putting in an effort, you're not just leaving them in the lurch, that you're actually making them feel valued and helping them to succeed. You could introduce time-saving technologies. So for example, auto marking. The auto marking becomes really useful during this remote learning. One, because the students then immediately get feedback as if from you about what they've done and do they know the knowledge. But for you as the lecturer, it's valuable. Yes, it saves your time, but you also know, are my students grasping the information? Do I need to recap, or can I carry on working? The next thing that you can do in terms of being valuable to you is look at resources like simulations, where you can be adding technologies that would be explaining concepts that they might be seeing practically normally in your workshop or in your lab, but now they can be looking at it from a digital point of view, and so you can still be enhancing their learning. And then you can be encouraging them around the space of lifelong learning. But you can also relate this to yourself as being valuable, that you can actually continue learning as the lecturer. So the skills that you are acquiring, see that as valuable. So how do you interact on the web? What are the two ways that you could be engaging with your students? Well, the first one is to engage from a synchronous point of view. And what synchronous means, it means that you as the lecturer and your students are online at the same time, whether it's in a video conference or whether it's perhaps in a collaborative live document. You're both working on a space or in a project at the same time. The other way is asynchronous. And what asynchronous means is that you as the lecturer and the students are working at different times when it's convenient to you. So think about projects that you give your students. They might go and get the project from you in the lecture, and then they go off and do the project. You don't see them doing it. You're working from an asynchronous point of view, but just perhaps not digitally. So you've got synchronous when you're working together and asynchronous when you're not. And so you might have a mixture of these two depending on the project or the task that you're doing and how you're engaging with your students. You wouldn't necessarily do one or the other. You would do both. So how do we engage our students in this remote learning? Well, I'd like you to think differently. I want you to explore different pedagogies and ways of teaching and not think of it from a standing in the front face-to-face kind of lecture. I want you to switch on your hat of let's think differently and explore. So first of all, you could be doing your whole group online lecture using video conferencing. So that you could get all your students online and saying, we're going to have our engagement like we normally do. But when you're doing it remotely, don't keep it for the whole hour or 2 hours as a lecture would be. Keep it short. Get to the crux of what you're wanting to work with your students and not spend all the time on the video conference. When you're engaging with them in this space, use visuals and pictures and animations to explain what you're talking about. When you start doing this, even when you go back to face-to-face, include these types of resources with your students. So you're making it more real, that you're embedding other information within your students. Allow questions. Use the chat feature. So just like we've said, the chat feature on the side in this chat, and we would really like you to ask questions and engage. So you could do that with your students so that your students can be asking questions. You could be answering them on the chat, but you could also allow your other students to engage with each other, that they react to the questions that other people have posted. The other thing is teach your students the video call etiquette. For example, like mute yourself while you are listening, so that when you go into an online video, your first reaction should be to mute yourself. You don't know what's going to happen behind you. You don't know if a dog's suddenly going to come running in barking, or children might start playing outside, or maybe somebody suddenly starts cleaning. So that noise would then distract the other people in this space. So etiquette being mute yourselves. The other etiquette would also be that if your signal is bad and they can't hear really nicely, or the picture is not good, perhaps they would switch their cameras off. But preferably in a video session with your students, you might want their cameras on so you can actually see who they are and engage with them. But if their signal's bad, get them to switch it off. So let's look further. So continue thinking differently, please. Let's explore more. Another one might be looking at, instead of your whole class as a session, have small group video calls and chats. How those would then be beneficial would be very different, because now you can have actual engagements with your students. You can have chats with individuals rather than speaking to the big group. You can actually get to know your students, which is perhaps more than we sometimes do in our big lecture kinds of spaces. And the other thing is that the students then truly feel valued and motivated, that you've taken the time to make a small group and really find out how they're doing and do they understand the content. Another one that you can look at is using your timetable. So all colleges have an existing timetable. My suggestion here is that you don't actually change the timetable, that you use the same timetable that you always have done, because if you're setting up a video call or something, the students aren't going to say, "Sir, ma'am, your call is clashing with another lecturer's." If you're using the timetable, those kinds of problems would be sorted, and actually it'll make life easier for everybody. The other thing is, take this timetable and put it on a digital calendar, something that can be easily adapted, something that where you can attach other documents, that it's live. So if a change is made, everybody can see it. You can access it on a computer or on your phone. So there's no confusion as to what is happening. It's not written in a book somewhere or it's on a website as a PDF. It's a real live document that can make things easier for everybody in that space. So again, if we continue thinking differently, how can you actually enhance the content that you're teaching? What are the kinds of ways that you can actually get your students engaged? Well, first of all, add things like animations and interactives. So tomorrow we'll show you some examples of these. But by adding animations, you can actually be explaining concepts that you might be teaching. An interactive might be a poll or a quiz, or sometimes it's actually an activity or a problem that might be solved digitally. The other thing is use regular feedback. So whether it's a Google form or some other type of quiz, use auto marking within that, because then your students would know what's happening in that space. They would know if they are understanding the content, and so would you. So regular feedback as a response or a form question is really useful, both to you and your students. And then the other thing to think about in terms of content is avoid large files. When you develop your course material, it's often one big booklet that gets printed for the students, and it lives on the web, and it might be 50, 60, 70 pages long. If you now just put that up for your students to download, it's going to use a lot of data. And also you want your students to be engaged. So it's better if you take that big document and you break it into lots of small sections and give it to them piece by piece by piece as you're expecting them to work through the notes. It also means that you keep in touch with them, and when they want to download the information, it's smaller in size to download. The other thing is, if you're making videos for your students, keep them short. Don't make them long for the same reason, so that it's not using a lot of data. And also by giving them bite-sized pieces of information, you're then engaging them more often rather than for a long period of time with a range of content. So what do I do as the lecturer? What do I need to make this remote learning possible? Here are some ideas. So just as when you're a face-to-face lecturer, be prepared. Make sure that you that your notes are ready, that you've prepared for the space. If you are now using your technology, make sure you understand the technology that you're using. Play with the technology so that you understand it, that you feel comfortable. Take away your own fear in perhaps using a video conference. Share with with other lecturers. Have mock practice sessions so that you all become familiar with how you use these tools. So be prepared from a range of different spaces. Then you've already created digital resources. I'm assuming that you're not handwriting your notes and photocopying those for your students, that you've typed them up and you've got digital resources already. So instead of now printing these resources, put them online so that your students can access them. Maybe turn them into bite-sized bits or make little copies of them which are smaller, but you've got the resources already. Use what you have. So what do your students really need? Well, the main need that we can see that students have in terms of accessing it is data. Data, data, and even more data. So one of the big problems with getting students to engage is this. So what are the things that your institution is doing to help students get data? Please write some comments in the chat about how you're actually helping your students with data. So I've heard of some institutions who have given their students sort of a token amount of data, and as they actually participate and respond to the lecturers, they're then rewarded with more data. The universities or the colleges who've signed up onto the platforms with the data-free websites, and tomorrow we'll share some of those with you. So there are a range of organizations who have had their portals and their websites and their LMSs listed as data-free so that their students can get it. So there are different ways of how we could manage this. We would love to know how you're actually helping your students in terms of data. The other thing that your students would need would be a device, preferably a device with a keyboard. Because if you're expecting them to type out assignments and stuff, it's much easier when you've got a keyboard than when you're trying to type up a really long essay and check it and is it okay when you're doing it on your phone. So preferably a device with a keyboard. And then make sure that the device can connect to the internet so that they are able to access the remote sessions. The other suggestion you could say is that a smartphone is really useful, especially for your video calls. Smartphones are designed to actually take your video call and reduce your amount of bandwidth so that it actually works better. So if you connect on your smartphone in terms of your video conferencing, and then they use their other device to download materials, or if you're interacting on interactive documents. So the students could be using the two. And then the other one is preferably to have earphones. If you're expecting students to be going into video chats, earphones are really, really useful, both for yourself and for your students. And they don't have to be those big, fancy, expensive ones that are sound blocking headphones. Just your ordinary little earbuds that you get with your cell phones work well. But the minute you put those in, you'll see that you'll be able to hear better. In fact, on some laptops, you need to have earphones in to actually make the sound work. So sometimes if we can't hear, we just need to plug in our little earphones from our cell phones and you'll hear that the sound on your laptop works well. But have a look at getting or using earphones. Now, what are some ideas from a college's point of view, the responsibilities to support students? So first of all, we're expecting our students now to use digital tools. We're expecting them how to know how to create documents. And maybe this wasn't a prerequisite before. Maybe you allowed students to hand in handwritten notes. So from a college's point of view, are there online resources being provided to upskill your students in technical knowledge? So for example, a productivity suite might be Microsoft, it might be Google G Suite or Google Docs, it might be Apple's documents. Is there a platform where your students can hop into and go into a course to learn how to use Microsoft or how to use Google? How do you create a document or a spreadsheet or a presentation? What do these three mean? When do we use these different ones? So if the colleges provided that kind of support, it then helps relieve pressure and it helps relieve strain in terms of how do I get this document done? Or I really am not sure what to do. So technological knowledge and fluency. Are we upskilling the students from that point of view? Another one is how are we helping our students to adapt to using technology effectively? So you're now saying to them, well, you've got to use this technology, and they're sitting remotely away from the university space. It's difficult for them to talk to anybody around it. What are the tips that you are giving them in terms of adapting to this? Are you actually helping them to create a space? Are you actually teaching them how to use the technology? Are you as lecturers being helped within this space? And we shouldn't assume that they just know because they're on their phones. This is completely different knowledge. It's work knowledge. It's knowledge that they would need in terms of when they are finished with your course, they go out into the working world. So are we helping them to adapt to use this technology effectively? And if we get this right, it'll actually help them for the rest of their lives as they begin to work. The last one is how are you being helped both as lecturers and as students to troubleshoot technical issues? So think about that. When you're on campus, you can run off to the IT department and say, oh, this is not working, please can you help? Or if your data projector is not working in your venue, you can phone up somebody or send an email and say, please can somebody come and fix this? When you're working remotely, there isn't that kind of support, or is there? And so how are you being supported from a technical point of view so that you can actually resolve the issues yourselves, that you can self-learn? And what are the tips and the information that's been shared with students to do the same if they can't connect, or if they're having trouble connecting, or if the systems are not working? So these are the three kinds of areas where the college could help. So the technological skills and influence, are we actually providing those resources? Helping students to adapt and helping them to cope with their own technical issues, to troubleshoot the technical issues. I'm going to ask you a poll again, please. And in this instance, I just want to launch it. What we are going to look at is how are your students supported? Please, would you tick more than one box? You might have your students supported from a range of different points of view. Please would you select what they are? So we've got tech support, online courses, maybe you've got a phone-in center, a chat line, or maybe no support. But if you're doing more than one, please would you select that? I'm going to launch it. Again, the same applies. It might take a while to connect and for you to be able to tick on it. It is multiple choice, so you can tick on more than one option. And if you can't tick on it, please, please, please put your resources into the chat. So how are you being supported? Are you being supported? Pop them into the chat or answer the response. Thank you to those who are participating. We've got about 20% of you who've already engaged, so that's really cool. Not many of you are commenting in the chat, so I'm assuming that it's working well, so we want to see more. Some of your responses are coming through, so not much support given. Chat line support. What are the rest? So let's see what other people are saying. Please engage. Let's see. Your responses are really, really important. That's nice. Online courses to learn how to use the tech. That's very cool, as well as the online chat. No support. I'm going to give you a few more minutes, a few more seconds, sorry. Come on, let's engage. We're only sitting on 60% of you. Where the rest? Please put your comments in or put them in the chat. We really want your engagement, so that would be really cool. I'm going to close the poll. If you've still got comments that you want to put in, please put them in the chat. I'm now going to launch the results. So it's really interesting here. So the interesting thing for me is that when we had the earlier poll, more than half of you were saying that you're doing distance learning and it's okay. But now we're seeing that 60% of you are saying, and if we look at the comments that would grow, is that there is no tech support. So you are actually managing within the space without tech support. And I really do think this is something you should bring up with your superior or your senior lecturers and or your departments and even your management in terms of how can the tech really support you within the space. So it's not just for now for remote learning, but even going forward in terms of a digital kind of space. What are the kinds of things that they can do to support you as lecturers further? Thank you so much for your participation. It truly is valued. So thank you. I'm going to hide the poll and then carry on. So what are the tips or things that you could give to your students during this time? What are the kinds of things that you might discuss with your students? Well, the first thing that we're going to look at is how are you helping them in terms of giving them guidelines, managing their time, managing their home life, all those types of things. So what guidelines could you give to your students to help them with engaging from a remote point of view? Are you helping them to manage their time? Just think how difficult that is. They might be students who are now at home. They might have their own children, or they might be looking after younger siblings. They might have to be helping with housework and cooking, or perhaps doing other types of chores. So how are we helping them to cope within that space? Are we actually giving them guidelines that they could give to the rest of the family in terms of that they're still doing university, that they're still doing college studies? That even though they're not physically in the college space, they're still expected to submit assignments or to engage. So how are we helping them to manage their time? Are you giving them guidelines to plan a daily routine that they could then share with their families? For example, that they could say, well, on this day, I've got these kinds of video calls, so I'm not available then. And when I'm in those calls, please try not to make a lot of noise so that I can hear and that there's not a lot of background noise, but also that I can help with cooking here or chores there. But I'm also going to take a block of time where I can actually sit and focus on my work. So what kinds of tips for your course and your students could you give in terms of planning their daily routine? What are the kinds of tips you could give them to staying focused? How are you keeping them motivated? So what are the things that you're doing? Perhaps you're sharing resources with them. Perhaps you're communicating with WhatsApp or SMS or other forms of communication. But how are you helping them from that point of view that they actually know that they are valued? How are you helping them to learn the digital resources that you are wanting them to do? So if you found an amazing resource for your students and you now want them to do this look at this animation and answer the questions or the interactive have you actually demonstrated it to them? Have you actually taken the time to show them how the technology works? So are you providing those types of tips for your students? How are you helping them to study efficiently so that they're not spending their time sort of looking at unnecessary resources, or perhaps not sure where to go and then having to cope with home life? So what are the kinds of things that you're helping them so that they can get through their studies and they can get through it really efficiently and not wasting a lot of time? Are you encouraging them to ask for help? So asking for help from different points of view. So perhaps if it's a technical kind of thing, could they email the IT support team, or is there somebody or some organization which could help them with that? If they're wanting something related to the course, that they can ask you questions. Do you have tutors that assist you? So what kinds of questions would go to the tutors and what would go to you? So encouraging them to collaborate and to ask and to find out, and not just to worry and be stressed on their own of work that they're not sure what to do or not sure how to solve a problem. The other kind of tip is in terms of how are you teaching them to be responsible digital users? So if they know that they are going to have to hop into a video call or they're working on a collaborative doc, is their device charged? Because it's no good if they've got the technology, but they actually can't get on because they forgot to charge it, and the only space in the house which is quiet to do a video call doesn't have a plug. So how are you teaching them to be responsible technology users in terms of that? How are you giving them tips about taking ownership of their learning? So just as it would be when you're having a face-to-face session and you're encouraging them to do their project and you providing stimulation in terms of take ownership of your learning, that the project is yours, how are you giving them tips now when they're not on campus and they don't have access to a library or they don't have access to a lab where they can go and sit in front of a computer? What are the kinds of things that you could give to students that would be customized for the course that you are offering? And then the other important thing is, how are you giving them tips to be responsible digital citizens? What is the stuff that they're putting out there to the world about themselves? First of all, they are students from your institution. So is it a good reflection of your institution? The other thing is that whatever they put out there, it's about them. So if they're putting out negative stuff, will that impact them perhaps not getting a job one day? So being aware of what they post. Are you teaching them or reminding them to be responsible digital citizens? That their space, that their footprint or their tattoo from a digital point of view is one where somebody will say, yes, this person will definitely employ, because if we search online, it's a really good response we get from that. And then the other thing is, encourage your students to do remote teamwork so that they're not feeling completely isolated. Whether you're putting them in groups or encouraging them to be in groups, try and have a look to see that everybody is in a group where they can actually talk to each other around a project that they're doing or an assignment that they've got, or just content in terms of a topic that's been covered. So encouraging them to engage with each other from a digital point of view, whether it's teaching them how to do a video conference that they could get in themselves, or whether it's saying to them, make a little WhatsApp group to share information, but encouraging them to work together just as they would in a face-to-face space, where they sit in huddles and share about a project or work on projects together or share ideas around learnings. So you would want them to do this from a digital point of view. So as we finish off, let's recap. So as for you, the lecturer, let's think about it. Get involved, upskill yourself. Often we say, oh, we're too old, or no, we can't do this, it's too difficult, or start changing your own mindset. It starts with you. Begin to play. Go into Google and just search your topic and your content and you will find all sorts of things. Start removing your own fear of this digital thing, of these video conferences. Set up mini chats with your lecturers and people you feel comfortable so that you can support each other and learn from each other. But get involved as the lecturer. Don't say, I can't do this and I'm not going to. Get involved, upskill yourself. And then be proud of what you've done. You look over the last few months and you think how you've actually engaged with your students and how you've reached out to the students and actually in really difficult times actually made some successes. Reward yourself for that, acknowledge that, and praise yourself for that. Then Macmillan Teacher Campus has a range of different workshops similar to this one. Please look out for those. But continue thinking about how do you upskill yourself. The next thing is set the example. If you want your students to continue with their work, you want your students to finish your course successfully, you've got to be the driver and the motivator. You've got to encourage them to do this. So how are you setting the example? How are you motivating your students or your colleagues to be the example for your students so that they will succeed? And then change your mindset about adjusting to the new normal. Are things actually going to go back to the way they were? And maybe not for a while. That you might have to, even if you do face-to-face sessions, that you're going to have to wear a mask. I had a friend the other day saying she's now got her class back, but her children can't hear her because she's wearing a mask. So how are we adjusting to this new normal? How are we integrating the technology into all of what we teach? And not saying when we go back to face-to-face, we're just going to throw everything out the window. What does it mean for your spaces in terms of social distancing? How are we using technology to help us achieve that more? So what are the things that you are doing so that you turn it into a positive? It's really easy to always focus on the negative. Start looking at the positive. Find the good things. Find the successes and see how you can adjust. And then you as the lecturer, you truly hold the key to your student success. You hold the key when you're having your normal face-to-face sessions, and you hold it with this remote learning. So think about how you are really helping your students to succeed, how you are really benefiting your students so that they feel empowered, that they will be able to move forward. So I want to say thank you for your time today. I hope you found the workshop beneficial. I hope you found some of the ideas useful. We're going to look at the Q&A now and have a chat. But what I would really like for you to do, please, is I would like for you to complete this Google form, and your responses and feedback are really valuable to us. So I'm just going to paste it in the chat. So there's the hyperlink. If you could please click on the hyperlink of the Google form that's in the chat, and if you could fill in your responses to this morning's session, that will be really valuable. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your participation and engagement. It's really valuable, and we look forward to seeing your comments. Ricky, over to you.
Yes, thank you so much, Karen. There weren't very many questions as such. What I would like to add from my side is a couple of things. You cannot ride a bicycle successfully until you've practiced. Same with driving a car, the same with technology. Practice, practice, practice. Yes, your first session might be a total flop, but don't let that scare you. This is new for almost everybody. So really, I think your students will understand if there are some technical issues that get in the way, but the important thing is how you deal with the technical issues. Take it in your stride, because there are certain things that you can control and there are things that you can't control. You have no control over. And those things that you've got no control over, it's no use stressing about those things and letting that influence your life, your quality of life, and how you sleep at night. So don't be scared. And then also very, very importantly is explore, explore, explore. So tomorrow's session, we're going to go into much more detail about what is actually available for you. Different sites, different apps that you can use, lots of interesting things that you can learn. So thank you so much for attending the exciting session today. We've given you many ideas for discussion with your campus managers as well, things around technical support, things around data and things like that as well. In tomorrow's session, we are also going to be giving you a document which contains a whole lot of data-free sites that you can have access to as well, and also a lot of cool things that we will look at. So please don't miss out on tomorrow's session. Please don't forget, if you haven't registered for tomorrow's session, I'm going to put my email address. What I am actually going to do is I'm going to send all of you, after tomorrow's session, I'll send everyone that has attended today and tomorrow's session the links to the recordings. So you're welcome to have a look at those again. When you get these links, you will just fill in your email address to register, but the recording pops up. But you will also have access to the downloadable documents again if you've missed downloading them today. So Karen, thank you so very much for your time, for your expertise. We really, really appreciate what you've done in putting this together for us. We've learned an incredible amount, and we cannot wait for tomorrow's session. So thank you very, very much.
Pleasure. I just want to say a couple of things. If I'm looking at the chat today, lots of you had technical issues. And my suggestion to you is use the video conferencing facility your organization uses, whether it's Microsoft Teams, whether if you're a Google institution using Meet, or if you're using Zoom, but play with your colleagues. Go in and set up a session and just fiddle and see what's there and how it works and how do I get my sound going. So just start with you where you feel comfortable. That you can actually help yourself to build the skills and take away your own feelings of frustration and disappointment and all those kinds of things. It is possible. It really is possible. And for me, over the years, all I've done is play with technology. I've just played. I haven't been on many courses, but I've literally just gone in and played. Use Google, go and search it, watch videos, and play. And like build your own confidence that way. It's really fun when you start. Yeah. Thanks, Rix, for the kind words.
I must be honest with you that everything that I know about computers and things is all self-taught. And, you know, it really is, it's possible to teach yourself. So the bottom line is explore and don't be afraid. Don't be scared.
And the other
So
thing,
thank you, everybody.
yeah, before you switch off, age is not an issue. I'm not sure what your ages are, but Ricky and I are not young. So age is age is not an issue. It's just the mindset. Go in and play. You know, if you make a mistake with your students, then say to them, "Oh, guys, oh, I'm sorry, it didn't work today. Let's give a bash." Or I remember going into classes and saying to children, "Okay, I know I found this tool last week. Where is it now?" And let your students help you. You can do that. So yeah, we
Yeah, it
look forward
helps
to
them to
chatting
learn as
tomorrow.
well.
It
Thank you
does.
so
It
much, and we'll
does.
see everyone tomorrow.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Have a good
Okay,
day.
bye-bye.
Bye bye.